Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're all doing wonderful out there tonight, and welcome to episode number 177 of the Beyond the Ring with Big T WWE News and Rumors podcast. I'm your host, Big T, right here with you. And even though this is called, a WWE News and Rumors podcast, I'm sure you guys know that, every now and then I am very fortunate and very blessed to have a very special guest on the show. And that's exactly what I have for all of you tonight. And I hope that you're ready. I've been promoting this all week, as you all know. I want to start off here by saying we're going to give a grand opening here. Saying I've been promoting this to you guys all week, and I'm going to say, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to announce to all of you that the special guest that we have right here tonight, she is the former wife of the Dynamite Kid. She is the mother of the Dynamite Doll. She is the aunt to Natty Neidhart, Tyson Kidd, Davey Boy Smith Jr., Teddy Hart, and Matt Hart. And, of course, last but not least, she is also the voice of Hart Legacy Wrestling. I am so honored and privileged to present to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Michelle Billington is right here with us. Michelle, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good, Todd. Thank you for having me on your radio show.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm more than happy to have you here. Thank you for accepting the invitation. I'm going to start off here by asking you, Michelle, because it's always, a basic question, that everybody always likes to hear. And I'll announce this as more people come in as well. I just want to let you know to whoever's here right now, if you would like to ask Michelle a question, she will be answering questions from you guys. So make sure if you have any questions, put them in the live chat there. But first question I want to start off with. How did this all start? When did you first discover professional wrestling and fall in love with it?
Oh, well, we're going back a ways, but like a lot of people, I discovered it in my youth. And my father was a huge wrestling fan. We lived in a small town in Saskatchewan, Bengoff, Saskatchewan, and it came on TV, and every Saturday, dun, 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 and Stampede Wrestling would be on. It was a family sit down, watch the show. It's always amazing, always interesting. So when we did move into the big city of Regina, my father was a painter, so we painted houses. So we moved around quite a bit. But when he went back to Regina, Saskatchewan, Stampede Wrestling would come in every Tuesday night. So my dad would often take my brother Mark, and then so many times I was like, take me, I want to be your son. And I did. One night my brother wasn't available, and Dad's like, okay, I'll take you, and I loved it. And yeah, I remember he asked me to go get a autograph because the wrestlers would give autographs while they're standing in the ring. We don't do that today, but back then they did, and there was a big lineup for the baby face, and it was my first time at the wrestling, and I'm like, I'm going to go ask the guy who has nobody lined up in his corner. So I got his autograph, and I came back. I was so proud. I'm like, Dad, I got you an autograph. And he's like, sweetie, that was the bad guy. And I'm like, what? And then, bam, like the matches started, and the bad guy made the good guy all full of blood, and I was like, oh no, why did I get his autograph? So I guess I was destined to be with the bad guys.
Ah,
the heels.
It had to be pretty interesting, though, getting your first autograph. I remember when I got my first autograph, I was like, oh my god, this is great. Oh, I loved it. So, you had that incredible first night, of professional wrestling, and you fell in love with the sport. What happened next? Did the love just stick with you, and did you kind of start thinking to yourself, "I got to get involved in this somehow"? What happened next for you?
My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, my mother's mother, was also at the wrestling in the front row, and she would go every Tuesday as well. And she was a die-hard fan. Like she did, it was like her bingo. She never missed bingo, and she never missed wrestling. My dad would, come and go because sometimes he worked at night. But Grandma was always there. And Julie and I, she's my sister. She was married to Bret Hart, and we worked for Pioneer Security. So we were security guards at the exhibition grounds, and we kind of forgot about wrestling. Grandma still went, and Dad kind of went, but we were older now. We were mature. We had jobs, and Julie was watching the wrestling, and she saw a very handsome young man on the TV while we were talking to our boss, because he had a little television in his camper, because we had a station for the security guards to warm up, because it was 40 below. We were like parking cars and like watching prize bulls, and one year I had to look after some $1 million tractors for the tractor pull. It was like big serious stuff. Anyway, so Julie saw it was Bret. Bret was doing an interview, and she was like, "Wow, who's that guy?" And our boss said, "That's Bret Hart. He's at the wrestling." And we're like, "Wrestling? We still have wrestling?" They're like, "Yeah." He goes, "You can come. Like, I do the security there." So we went there. We saw our grandmother, and our auntie was there, and we started going every week. And Julie and Bret just started making googly eyes at each other and smiling. And next thing you know, they were dating.
Wow.
And that's, yeah, I was 16 years old.
Wow, that had to be something, just somebody that she liked off of the TV. It just happened.
Well, it was just meant to be, like they just locked eyes, and that was it.
Wow, truly love at first sight, huh?
It was. Then she moved to Calgary, and Julie and I were so close. Like she was more like my mother than my mother at the time. My mom had 8 children, and I was in the middle. Julie was the second oldest, so Julie always looked out for me. And when she went to Calgary to live with Bret, I missed her so much. When Bret went to Japan, she would bring me out to stay with her in the summertime. And Bret borrowed an iron from Wayne Hart, who lived with Dynamite Kid in the same neighborhood. And Bret asked me to return the iron to Wayne's house. So I walked it over there, and I had watched wrestling. Like when Bret was wrestling, I was watching wrestling, and Bret was in a huge feud with Dynamite Kid. And I didn't tell Bret this, but I'm like, "I love your match." But in my heart, it was because I got to watch Dynamite Kid. I was like, "Wow, is that guy ever fast?" It was like watching a ping pong ball.
Oh.
He was so quick in the ring. Oh, it was I don't think even when people are watching his Tiger Mask matches, he's not as quick as he was when you first saw him, when he first came, when he was 20 years old. It was unbelievable how fast he was in that ring.
Oh, an amazing wrestler.
And the cool thing about him is that he wrestled, when he was in England, he wrestled people from Japan, Mexico, North America, and because he had done that, he mixed all those styles together. I mean, other people were doing it as well, but he was the one who was, going and making it into the higher up on the card and introducing this mixed sort of wrestling.
Yeah.
So I was watching those matches, and I saw Tom, and I was like, God, he's so cute, and he's got an accent, and I was into Shakespeare, and so I take this iron to Wayne Hart's house, and unbeknownst to me, Tom actually lived there, and he answered the door. I was just so shocked, like, here's Dynamite Kid answering the door. I gave him the iron. I could barely talk, and I was like, okay, thank you, and I left. I was like, wow, you didn't tell me that Dynamite Kid lives at Wayne Hart's house. That Wayne was Bret's older brother.
So that caught you off guard.
Oh, yeah. And then a couple of times at the wrestling, Tom would come out while I was watching the matches, and he'd talk to me, but we couldn't really talk to each other because, well, he was beating Bret up all the time. And I didn't want Bret to think I was disloyal, and I was pretty sure Tom wasn't interested in me because I just was a girl from Saskatchewan. I didn't think I was his cup of tea. But later he told me he was. He goes, why do you think I was outside the dressing room? That was supposed to be a big hint that I liked you. And I was like, well, I didn't know. I just thought you were being nice. But anyway, so we'd have these conversations without looking at each other, like as we're watching the matches, so that in case anyone saw us, they wouldn't tell Bret or,
Yeah.
I wouldn't get in trouble. So one day he did ask me for a date, and we went on a date to the White Spot, and we didn't tell Bret or Julie. And the White Spot is like a surf and turf kind of a place, and I was 16, and I wanted to impress him, and he was 20. How well I knew how to order things off the menu, and so I started ordering like lobster, and I wanted my steak medium rare, and it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a Saturday. He was, having this lunch date with me, and then he had to go to wrestle in Edmonton, so he had to make the meeting spot by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And here I am sitting there, like, ordering all this fancy stuff, and he didn't order anything. He had some water and a cup of coffee. And I was like, oh, you're not hungry? And he goes, no, I'm on a strict diet. I have to work out, and, if I eat right now, I'll throw up if I wrestle tonight. And then later he told me, I didn't have enough money to pay for all that stuff. Plus, he goes, you kept ordering all these things, and I didn't want to say you couldn't. Yeah, and another thing, he let me drive his Cadillac, and I was embarrassed that I wore glasses, so I was driving this Cadillac with my learner's license, without my glasses, down 9th Avenue in Calgary.
Oh.
And he's just like, I'm like, oh, am I driving okay? He's like, no, you're doing great. But, later it was like, oh, my God, he probably just wanted to scream because I was driving really slow and I squinting my eyes and, like, creeping along down 9th Avenue in this Cadillac.
Oh, that had to be a good memory.
That's our first date, yeah. He ordered water.
Let's see, it sounds like a really interesting first date, with a lot of, like, something that you look back at, like, now especially, and just, you laugh, it's a good, fond memory.
Yeah. And then the second time we had a date, he took me to his neighbor's house across the street from Wayne's. Her name was Phyllis Baldwin, and she was a security guard at the wrestling. And she was a huge fan and a very good friend, and they were having a barbecue, and I was supposed to go up to Stu and Helen's for Sunday dinner. Well, we went up every Sunday. But Helen was making a lamb dinner, and I was raised on a farm. And lamb, I cannot eat lamb because we had a baby lamb named Buttons. The mother died. So we raised that lamb, my cousins and I, and we bottle fed it. And then when Buttons would follow us around like a dog, and, when it got older, and it still remembered us. It was our pet.
Yeah. And
we ended up eating it. Like, my grandparents ended up, like, butchering it, like, yeah, it's time to kill Buttons. And I was like, what?
Oh, you're like, no, not Buttons.
No, not Buttons. And roasting, no, we're going to have a lovely lamb dinner. And the smell of lamb to this day just reminds me of Buttons. Anyway, I told that story to Mrs. Hart, Helen. And she's so lovely and gracious. She's like, I'll make you a Cornish game hen. So she made me special chicken so that I wouldn't have to eat buttons. But I canceled it. Like at the last minute, Dynamite Kid asked me to go to his neighbor's barbecue. So I canceled that, and Bret was upset with me. He's like, my mom made the special chicken, and I'm like, yeah, well, Dynamite Kid asked me out, and he came to the house and said, you're coming with me, and Tom's like, no, she's staying here, and I stayed. I stayed for the barbecue, and I said, well, tell Helen I'm sorry, she'll understand, and she did, because she's gracious.
Oh, yeah, Helen, just by seeing her on TV, from time and time again, or hearing interviews with her, she just seemed like such a great woman.
You know what? She was a grand lady, and Julie and I, we were raised in Regina, Saskatchewan. We had 8 kids in the family, and it was like, there was nothing called manners. Like, there was no manners. We didn't learn manners, and it was like, eat or you'll starve. You just grab what you can and eat where you can, and we didn't know anything but elbows and please and thank you, and also, we're First Nations, and it's not a part of our culture. It's not a part of our culture to say thank you. It's, it's demeaning our culture. It's a European thing to teach First Nations children to say please and thank you.
Yeah.
But still, when I was at Helen's for dinner, I was like, I have no idea what to do with these forks and knives and the glasses, and it was helping her set the table, and I didn't know how to set it properly, but she showed us quite a bit. I always think that it was Helen that taught us how our proper etiquette.
Yeah, and Stu, being over there, with Stu around as well, I'm sure you got a lot of great wrestling memories with Stu as well.
Wrestling memories and a lot of, the Sunday dinners. So, like, when you would go to Sunday dinners, you always knew Stu was in charge of the meat. And, if dinner was supposed to be at 6, you might eat at 8. Like, you always had that. You better eat a little something before you go, because you never know how long it's going to take. So the Harts are infamous for being late or for having some delays. And it was always worth it. And then to see Stu come up with his prime rib dinner, I think back now, and it was like he must have paid so much for how big that roast was, like $300 to $500 maybe. But he always cooked enough for an army. Like, no one went hungry, and everyone had seconds and thirds, and we just loved it. It was such a great time.
And to feed the whole family, that's a big family.
Yeah, and if Stu liked you, he would pour the blood from the prime rib on your plate, and Julie and I always got the blood.
Oh,
so we're like, thank you. He likes us.
Yeah, that was like a sign right there. Okay, you're good with Stu.
Yeah. Well, you had to be a good eater. You had to have good teeth, good legs.
Oh, yeah.
He checked you out like a horse. We passed.
And, having all these great memories with the Hart family, and, you're starting to date the Dynamite Kid. When you guys went out on your first couple dates now, as we talked about, when did things escalate to where you thought...
When they get serious?
Yeah, when you thought to yourself, wow, this is it. This is the guy. And then I know the rest was history. You both ended up getting married, and...
Well, I think it was after his first trip to Japan. Well, like his trip to Japan, the first trip being with me. Like, I was the girlfriend. And once I had that, and he went to Japan, I think that's when it was like, it was just torture. I mean, you fall in love, and the guy leaves for 6 weeks. Now, any girl or guy who's been through that, like, separation at the beginning of falling in love, it was difficult. And time just dragged and dragged. It was just for him to get home. And And I think that's why Julie brought me up, too, when Bret went to Japan. Because those 6 weeks just seemed like forever.
Oh, I can imagine. You know, and those tours of Japan back then too. You know, even though they were long, I'm sure they were brutal too.
Yeah. And then when he came back, it wasn't too much longer after that I was paying rent at a place, because I actually moved out of Bret and Julie's and rented my own place just so that I wouldn't get these disappointed looks from Bret, because Bret never approved of Tom. He always said, you should be with a doctor or a lawyer. Like, what are you doing with him? And he's going to just hang you up like he does all the girls, like, his wrestling boots. And he goes, I'm going to ask him what his intentions are. So Bret went up to Tom and said, this one we just started dating. I was just mortified. I'm like, don't ask him that. You're going to scare him off. But he said, like, what's your intentions? This is my sister-in-law, and, she's not like one of your girls that you hang up your wrestling boots. She's not like that, and she can do better than you. And he goes, I have no intentions. Well, he said it in English, broken English. He goes, I have no fucking intentions. and then Bret told me that Tom had said that, and I was just heartbroken. And I didn't want to say anything to Tom, like, so you have no intentions for me? Because who says that to someone when they're dating? Like, so are we going to get married someday? Or, is this just a fling? Or, like, nobody really talks like that when they first start dating. So I was mortified.
Was he trying to hide it from Bret, maybe?
Well, I think in Tom's defense, it was like, none of your business, Bret. I think that was Tom's way of saying none of your business.
I see. So
later on, I figured out it wasn't a diss, but I didn't know. I was young.
Yeah, at that point, it's like, oh, what's going on here? This doesn't seem right.
Yeah, so then I moved in with him. And when he wanted to take me to England to meet his family, and then just casually he says one night, oh, when we're in England, we should get married. And I was like, yeah? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, well, I'd like my sister. Like, he never actually asked me to marry him, and I never actually said yes. We just kind of just started talking about it, like just started planning. He's like,
okay.
Yeah, when we're in England, we should get married. And I was like, yeah, well, I'd like my sister there, but he goes, we'll check it out. And then Julie and Bret went to Germany, and they met us over there in England. So I'm like, yeah, we could get married over here, like when Bret and Julie comes. And so by the time I went to England, and I met his family, and then I said to Tom, like, aren't we going to get married? Like, should I ask your mom and dad how to go about it? And he's like, no, I've decided not to get married in England because I don't want to say I do in front of people, he said, in front of his family. And I was like, oh, okay. He says, we'll get married when we'll go back to Canada. So it was never like, will you marry me? It was nothing like that.
Yeah, it was just all planning, and then it just happened.
Yeah, it was just like our next step. Like, and then when we did get married, it was in front of a judge, and Bret and Julie were our witnesses. And it was just on a Thursday when it was Julie's birthday, because I wanted to pick a date close to when we first started dating. We started dating around March 21st, and Julie's birthday was the 25th, so I'm like, oh, okay, Thursday, that's Julie's birthday. It's kind of close to our sort of anniversary. And then it just so happened they had a spot show that was canceled that night, so I was like, and you're available? So I remember the night before we got married, he said to me, what time do I gotta fucking get up tomorrow? I was like, what? That's no way to ask what time are we getting married. He's like, I'm not fucking getting married at 7 in the fucking morning. And I was like, you don't have to worry about it. It's at 4 o'clock. And he's like, okay, that's good then. I was like, and that's just kind of how our relationship was. We were both very young. I was his first, serious girlfriend. Like, he had girls that he obviously saw, but then would not see. And then I was his first girlfriend.
Okay, yeah. So basically, no.
So we were
serious
very immature, very immature.
no serious relationships until you came along.
Yeah.
That was the life of wrestlers. Back in that day. I've heard many stories about it. A lot of
Well,
them.
they had a really rough circuit there. Like, it was grueling, and especially our winters, which you're probably getting a taste of it this year, right, with the vortex.
Oh yeah.
But in Saskatchewan, it'd be below 40, and it would just stay in that deep freeze all winter, and the roads would be like pure ice and black ice, and so just when they did go to make that show on a Tuesday, they would leave Tuesday morning from Calgary. They'd start out 10 in the morning to the meeting spot, maybe be out of town by noon, and get to the wrestling at 7. Hopefully the ring crew got there an hour earlier and set it up. And, they'd wrestle, and they get back in that van and come all the way home. And they come home about 6 in the morning. And it was usually Wayne that was driving, and everybody wanted Wayne to drive because he was so good and careful. And because, you could just fall asleep. Like, you've been on the road for almost 24 hours.
Oh yeah, that's.
And that was just one day. That wasn't the other shows in and around. On Fridays they were in Calgary, and Saturday they were 4 hours away in Edmonton. Sunday they usually had off, and then the odd Thursday. So that was it. It was just go, go, go.
See, now I don't know what it's like to wrestle, but I've had a taste of being out on the road for a long time in one day. That kind of takes me back to when my friend and I, we went up to WrestleMania back when they were in Dallas, and that was a 20-hour drive or 21-hour drive. And
yeah.
That was a long drive in the car. I can only imagine how long how long of a drive it is, after wrestling and being in pain.
Yeah. And then and the state of some of the vans, or the vehicles that they were in. I mean, I know the heel van, Stu's heel van. You could see the highway. There was like big cracks in the floor. You could see the highway.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
We have more people coming in right now, so I'm just gonna let everybody know because I see we have more listeners coming on in. Everybody, if you have any questions for Michelle, feel free to ask. She will be answering questions, so just put them in the live chat, and we're just going along here right now talking about some great moments and memories as we continue along. So, the long drives, from the shows, that's I can picture, being in Stu's heel van and just seeing the cracks on the highway.
Yeah. Well, and then a few times he would let me, hop in. They didn't really want females in the van unless they were, lady wrestlers. But I was cool. I was okay. They allowed me to go in there, but they had so much fun. Like, they really did. It was a riot. And once the wrestling was done and they were on their way back, they would be drinking their beers and, telling their stories and pulling the jokes. And I don't know if you guys know who John Foley was, but he managed Tom when Tom first came. And in his day in England, he was just like Tom. He was a shooter. He was like, no one messed with him. he did the catch as catch can wrestling in the snake pit. He was, well trained and could hold his own. But then later in life, he did a lot of drinking, and so they would play jokes on him. Put shaving cream on his head while he was smoking a cigarette, and Tom would say, "John, sing me Top of Old Smoky." And because John loved to sing, and he was like, "On top of Old Smoky," and Tom would have cigarettes put out in his shaving cream smoky thing that was on the little shaving cream cone that was on top of John's head. And John was so drunk he didn't know it was there, and Tom would be ashing it, and he's singing Smoky, and he's got all these smokes sticking out, burning in his shaving cream pile. And then Vera, God bless her, would always say, John's not drinking this time, like he's, John's not allowed to drink. And Tom would be like, "No, you can count on me, Vera. I'll make sure he doesn't have a drink." Well, then as soon as they got to, Regina, he'd be like, "Okay, let's pull in and get John some beer." And everyone's like giving John beer. Because John was so funny, and then once he started drinking, then they would, they would pass time away. It was harmless, and then when they drop John off, all the wrestlers would wait for it. Tom would take John up to the door, and ding dong, and John's standing there. He's still got the shaving cream on his head. And he's trying to act sober, and the cigarettes are still there. And she'd open the door, and Tom would go, "Oh yeah, I don't know where he got the alcohol from. And sorry." And Vera would be like, "You get in here right now." John's like, "I didn't have a drink, Vera. I didn't have a drink." He's all disheveled. He's got beer spilled all over the front of his shirt.
Yeah, he was caught. There's no way he could hide it.
Yeah, he was classic.
Oh, I'll tell you, back in the day, it just seemed like wrestling was a lot more fun. That's the kind of vibe I always get, when I hear about stories, like this especially. It just seems like the wrestling business and everything was more fun back then than it is today. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but that's kind of how I feel.
I've been watching some old wrestling tapes, so Stampede Wrestling, since Tom, Tom passed away December 5th on his birthday.
Yeah,
which is
by the way,
so ironic. And I was like, of course Dynamite Kid would come into this world and leave this world on the same day. That's perfectly timed. But a lot of the Stampede Wrestling tapes, fans have been putting up things that they videotaped off the TV. And Memphis Mafia, I don't know if you Google that one, but Honky Tonk Man and Ron Starr, they're cutting some promos there, and Tom and Davey Tom is a babyface at this point, and they have formed the British Bulldogs, and I think they're just sort of going to WWF, and then when they're in town, Vince allowed them to wrestle for Stampede, so it's just the beginning of the British Bulldogs. And, Calgary fans weren't used to Tom being a babyface, so it was kind of weird to see him talking so sweetly and mild-manneredly, that was not the Tom, the Dynamite Kid they knew, but they were very accepting of him. Anyway, the promos are hilarious, and at one point, Honky Tonk Man's telling, or Ron Starr's telling Honky Tonk Man, "Hit me with the chair, Wayne, hit me with the chair, Wayne," and he keeps hitting him with the chair, and I was like, I don't know what the point was, but it was so entertaining to see a tag team partner tell another one to hit him with the chair, because he's showing him how tough he is, right? And I was like, just things like that, it just made it so entertaining. And it was all improvised. I think, guys knew, oh, you're going to call out so-and-so, but no one told you how you were calling them out. You went in there and you improvised, and you just went for it. And I think that was the beauty of it, was the improvising the promos that, made it so real.
See, and that's exactly how I would run a wrestling business, if I was ever in control of one. I would give them bullet points on what to touch on and then just tell them, go out there and take care of the rest, because I feel that realism and that improvising, that is what the beauty of professional wrestling is, and even the beauty of a promo, when everything is
Yeah.
getting so scripted to every move, every word, just everything. It takes the authenticity away from it.
Yeah, and it's like Bret always said it best. It's like telling a story in the ring. It's an art form. And the Stampede guys, they called it in the ring. Like, they knew what their high spots were, sure, and they knew their finishes, but like how it was going to end. But everything in between, like, 30 minutes of it is just improvising.
Yeah.
And reading the crowd, like, what is the crowd, are they sympathetic to this person? No, they're not. I better do something nasty so they like this baby face, like there's a whole psychology that Stampede Wrestling and Stampede Wrestling fans, like our fans in Calgary, like they're smart. They know a good match from a bad match, and they know, what to cheer for.
Oh, I'll tell you, the Canadian fans are great. I love the Canadian fans. There's one show, or there's a couple show with Canadian fans that I remember that was just so great, where they were so passionate. But before I get to that, we have our first question, Michelle.
Sure.
Our first question here is from Rawkey, and he is asking, did Shawn Michaels have any effect on Bret Hart and Julie Hart's marriage, considering they split shortly after the Sunny Days promo?
No. I think it was barely even a mention. Like, Julie goes, and Bret was so mad. You know how you can tell if somebody's lying or not?
Oh,
Just
yeah.
by their reaction. I think if Bret was guilty, he wouldn't have got so mad. Like, I'm also a teacher, and I do that with my students. Like, if somebody gets really mad that so-and-so said they did blah, 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 I was like, wow, you're so mad that I think you didn't do it. So, and Bret was like that. Like, he was so mad at Shawn. And now we know now that Sunny had said that she was having an affair with Davey Boy at the time. Like, she's on YouTube saying that.
Oh,
So I'm
wow.
like, yeah. And I think Shawn suspected Bret because Bret was covering up for Davey, not covering up for Davey, but she was always with Bret to make it look like she wasn't with Davey. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they were together as friends, because Sunny was a good friend of my sister's, and all the kids, the Hart, my nieces and nephews, loved her. Like, she was like, would babysit them when they were backstage. She'd play with them, and she's one of those people who just loved to be around the kids.
You
So
know,
she was also a good friend with Bret.
yeah,
So,
I noticed that on
and
the.
as women, you can tell when your man is messing around with another woman. Like, there'll be signs, you'll have intuitions. Like, there was none of that. So it's like, we just thought it was Shawn being, like, trying to get some heat.
Yeah. And, I remember seeing clips in the Bret Hart documentary, Wrestling with Shadows, of Sonny just, like watching Bret Hart's son backstage, or they're playing around,
Yeah,
having fun, because, yeah,
yeah,
they were good friends.
yeah. So, yeah, no, I don't think Julie entertained that at all.
Let's see, here's two more questions. Alright, next one is from Jay, and he's asking, how does Michelle memorize the wrestler's weight, or does she just write them on cards?
I do have a card. I think the older I get, the more absent-minded I am. Especially when, it's a different wrestler when you don't announce the same person every week. It's, of course I know Teddy and everybody, but Yeah, I write it on a card. So if you see me announcing, you'll see a little card there. I'll have their tagline and where they're from and their weight.
Oh, cool. And third question is, do you feel or do you think that Natalya is being underutilized by the WWE?
Well, I think she's had a great career with them. I think they could do better with her, yes. But, she's there and she's still getting her paycheck, so you don't want to say anything negative because she still needs to be there, right?
Yeah, she
and
does.
she's part of the Divas and the reality show, and they've been so good to her too with the loss of Jim, and I Vince does have a fondness for her. He's good to her.
I know,
but it's not. I don't think he makes. Everybody thinks Vince is making all these decisions. It's more of his creative team, right? His agents, those people.
Oh, he's got so many people working underneath him, I'm sure they run everything by him and then he's got to approve it, but I know he's got a whole team, just coming up with stuff.
I can't even imagine being him because I work at an art school and we put on a huge show at the Jubilee. It's like the best acoustic sound in the city, so we have all the big shows there. Not the arena shows, but I'm just talking about the quality, like West Side Story or whatever. They'll be at the Jubilee. So we start planning for that show in August as teachers and artists. And by the time we get to the show in December, there has been so many decisions. And it's like I can be with just 4 people deciding something, and it takes a horrendous amount of time. There's so many egos. There's so many ideas. And, by the time you finally get to what is on the stage, you're like, wow, that was like childbirth. But, it's like now it's over and it feels good. But, wow. So I can't imagine being, part of the creative team for, say, WrestleMania or even Raw.
Oh, with everything they
It's
put
a big
together.
job. It's got to be a big job.
I would say so. All right, so that last question was from Kevin. This next question is interesting because I have heard many stories about Owen. I've heard many stories about Owen Hart, and a lot of good, heartwarming, funny stories about Owen Hart. But next question is, a lot of people have an Owen Hart prank story, since he liked to pull pranks on people. Do you have a Owen Hart prank story of your own?
Yeah, I have one. I hope it's okay to tell because I tell it. It's so funny, but I don't know if it's kind of crass. But so Owen's sister Diana Hart, she's the one who was married to Davy Boy, Tom's cousin. Her and her best friend Allison. Now Diana's a beautiful, gorgeous girl, and so is her friend Allison. And Keith Hart, his older brother, was married to Leslie DeBergier, and she's a gorgeous blonde. So we have these 3 gorgeous blondes in a condo in Hawaii, and the Harts are all over there because Dean and Peter Mavea, is it Mavera? Mavea?
Maivia.
Something to do with, pardon me?
Peter Maivia from the Samoan wrestling family?
Yeah. So the Harts are over there. I think Dean's kind of involved with the wrestling, and Keith's probably wrestling. But it's a vacation for the girls, for Diana and Allison. And Keith brought his girlfriend, Leslie. But they're all really beautiful, and not that Diana and Allison Hall were competitive at all, but Owen started, getting to them, right? Like, he would just start causing tension with the girls. And what he did was he took one of their panties and put peanut butter in it in the crotch, and he put the panties in the bathroom. And the girls, they all thought the panties were the other person's. They were like Diana and Allison were pretty sure they were, they were Leslie's, and Leslie thought they were Diana or Allison's. And he left those panties in there for like the whole week that they were there. And all those girls were just like, they were just like cats, like, like whose panties are those? And that's so gross. And like Keith had to hear about the panties, and Owen was just loving it. He never did. He just kept adding peanut butter in the panties. It's like, and then the girls, like, they never found out about, like, that it was him all along until they were back, and it was, like, years later, he's like, it was me. And when I met Leslie before I met Diana, and the first thing she told me was, like, wait till you meet Diana. She leaves her panties on the floor, and it's so disgusting, and I couldn't believe it. And that I met Diana, and she told me about Leslie's panties. And I was like, what is going on here? And then Bret finally, he's like, no, that was Owen and his pranks. He's like, got those girls all upset with each other. And he just loved it. Like, he just loved the tension.
Oh, you know what? That one gave me a good laugh. I'm still sitting here with a big smile on my face, and just, I could picture Owen just getting the biggest kick out of it with all the stories that I heard, about him loving to pull pranks over the years, and this sounds like exactly something he would do, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But, speaking of Owen, and I want to ask something a little serious here about Owen. Owen, out of the Hart family, between Bret and Owen, it's like those were, my two go-tos, when it came to the Hart wrestling. And, I seen Bret, back in 2007, I believe it was. Bret, finally went back to WWE, ended up getting put in the Hall of Fame. And, I just wonder, Owen, I don't know why WWE is, kind of just going past Owen. I feel, in my own opinion, that Owen, he definitely deserves an induction. I don't know why it's happened yet. Do you feel the same way, or is there anything you could comment on with that?
Well, two words, Martha Hart.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she just does not want his memory associated with anything to do with Vince McMahon and the WWE. She just really does not want him, Vince, making any kind of money off her husband. Oh. So even though it would all be in honor of Owen, she doesn't see it like that. And, that Owen and Martha were dating since they were 14 years old. They were each other's first boyfriend and girlfriend. You couldn't find a sweeter couple. Like, Owen was the best dad. He was the best husband. Out of all of those boys, Owen was the one that was home taking his kids swimming and, calling his wife. And, he was the one staying true to her. And he was the one that was only in it to make enough money to build a house. And then he was going to get out when he could have enough money to get his own business going. The last thing he wanted to be was a wrestler. When I knew him as a young man, he was like, I don't want to be a wrestler. He wanted to be a fireman. He had his eyes lasered so that he could, be a fireman like his brother-in-law, B.J. Annis, who is Ted Hart's dad. His goal was to be a fireman. Wow. He didn't get in. So he's like, oh, now what do I do? Oh, well, I know how to wrestle. I can wrestle. I'll do this. I'll only do this till I get out. The day he died, they were moving into their dream house.
Oh.
They were moving, like the bags were, like the boxes were all packed. When we went to see Martha, all those boxes were packed. And she's crying. Like he never went to the dream house. He never moved into the dream house. It's heartbreaking. Those kids were so little.
It is. That is
so you know, if she doesn't want him in there, then that's her decision.
You know what? That's true.
And I think there's other people that should be in there that's not in there. Like, you know, King Kong Bundy just passed. He's not in there.
Exactly. Vader was another one. You know, he's not in there. I mean, there's so many.
There is so many.
You know.
But you know, because Stu and Bret are in there, you know, yeah, of course we want him in there. We want the Bulldogs in there. We want them, you know, we do. We want them in there. We want the Hart Foundation in there. Yeah. Brian Pillman.
Davey and Tom, you know,
Jim Neidhart, yeah.
It's like they wait, you know, these wrestlers that have been there all this time, you know, that should be in, and you know, it's like they wait. I don't understand it, but I guess they have their reasons.
Yeah, and I think they have to be aware of any kind of controversial things that might come up. So to avoid that, I mean, they haven't enough. Like every time somebody's inducted, they're like, why him? Why her? Oh, yay for them. Yay for her. Like, you know, so they know there's going to be blowback if they put somebody in there that's controversial, and they wouldn't do it against Martha's wishes. Exactly. They would never do that.
Exactly. And, you know, I get, when it comes down to it, I mean, you're right. It is, you know, it is Martha's call, you know. If she wants it this way, then this is the way, you know, that it's going to be.
Yeah, and she's doing some fantastic things with the Owen Hart Foundation, raising money for the underprivileged, and I know she's went to other countries with the Owen Hart Foundation and built schools in third world countries, and you know, she's doing some incredible things in his memory. So that's his legacy is living on in those ways. It's you know, so it's not just, you know, Hall of Fame is not the only place where Owen can live on.
Exactly. He could live on, you know, many other places, and his legend does live on forever.
Yeah, it just, you know, it's been touted as the Hall of Fame, but there's other Hall of Fames out there too. Like yeah. Tom has been inducted to Hall of Fames that are not Vince's, you know, like in England or in the States, in Canada.
Yeah, you're right. You know, it's not the only Hall of Fame out there.
Yeah.
I have a few more things I would like to touch on, if that's okay, since we answered fan questions. I have a few things of my own that I would like to touch on with you. SummerSlam 1992 in Wembley when Davey Boy won the Intercontinental Championship against Bret. What kind of moment was that like for you in professional wrestling history?
Well, for me, it was watching it here and just being so proud of both of them. You know, like there's, you know, Davey Boy representing the best in England and Bret representing the best in Canada and the United States, because Mrs. Hart was from Long Island, New York. So she's a very proud American. She always wore her little American flag on her lapel when there was TV taping. And Stu, of course, a hardcore Canadian from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
Yeah, yeah.
So to have those two boys representing the three countries and, you know, and having like the best match and just bringing everybody to their feet, it was spectacular. And Diana, you know, how lovely to have her being the one connecting the three countries.
And in my opinion, it's the greatest Intercontinental Championship match that there ever was. Because
yeah.
I look at other Intercontinental Championship matches, I've seen some good ones, but at that moment in time, that title was so important. It even meant more than the WWE Championship, it seemed, because I remember Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man Randy Savage, they went on in the middle of the show, and this took the main event. I mean, Davey and Bret, they elevated that title up so high. It was amazing.
Yeah, and it's the quality and, the connection they have with each other, and that going back to the Stampede Wrestling days, and, having that same ring psychology and that same ability to improvise, and it was incredible.
Oh, it was. One other great thing, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, is Spring Stampede, or, no, not Spring Stampede, sorry, Canadian Stampede in 1997, the In Your House pay-per-view that the WWF had, and I remember, you know, when they had this pay-per-view, the crowd, just for Bret and his team, the reaction was just, it was such a hero's welcome. And then I remember after that, the whole Hart family was in the ring, everybody was celebrating. It was an amazing moment, actually one of my favorite moments. And were you there
Yeah,
for that? Were you with the
I was
family?
there. I was actually up in the stands, and Bret later said, you and the kids should have been in there. And when he looks at it, he said that, and I was like, oh, thanks, Bret. Like, no one told us that we were supposed to go down there and be in the ring.
Oh, no one ever
But
informed
it
you?
didn't matter. I still enjoyed it, and I still watch it. And yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's when the Hart Foundation came out. Diana had won Mrs. Calgary. She has a crown on.
Yes, yes.
So it was amazing. And Stu and Helen were in there.
It was like a big 10-man tag or something like that.
I know, and the Hart kids just kept coming in and coming in. Like, just when you thought, okay, that's all of them, they just kept coming in. It
they
was like, okay, now you got 10, 20, 30.
they filled up the ring. It was one of the most amazing sights that I've ever
Yeah,
seen after a match, and just the crowd in Canada was, it was amazing. The reaction, and just seeing the whole Hart family. They kept coming in and coming in, and oh, it was a sight to behold.
it was.
Another
And all,
interest.
all those kids are raised on wrestling too. Like, even my kids, when we go up to Stu's, he had a ring in the backyard. I had the dungeon, but they weren't allowed in there. But the, in the ring, yeah, I was watching Matt Hart wrestle like a couple of weeks ago, and he came over from RCW. He left RCW to come to Hart Legacy Wrestling. And just when I saw people were slamming him, just the way he was taking the bump, I was like, man, I remember you doing that when you were 3 years old. The older cousins kept slamming him in the ring, and I was like, I don't know if he should be doing that. And Smith was like, no, it'll toughen him up. And they were all slammed in the ring at that age, and he just kept getting up with a smile on his face. And I was like, yeah, I guess he doesn't mind it. But all the kids, it was like a rite of passage. If you were the youngest when you got slammed.
Oh, wrestling was in their blood, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Another interesting fact that everybody always likes to talk about, and it's still talked about until this very day, and that would be the Montreal Screwjob at Survivor
Ugh.
Series 1997. I could imagine that had to be, one of the most devastating days, but it's still such a newsworthy topic, and everybody still talks about it. And I even did a podcast, a few months back, just talking about the whole Montreal Screwjob in depth, because people, they want to hear people's takes on it still, and it's a very hot topic. So if you can, um,
Yeah, I was there. Um,
how
I was
was
actually outside the dressing room with Julie. Like like when it happened, we were just shocked because we had a box. It was in an arena, so it was like the hockey players kind of in the box where they sit in.
Yeah.
So we were in there. We were right at ring level, and then it happened, and we went in the back, and Bret had went in the dressing room, and Vince was coming in the dressing room, and as he was about to enter, I said, "You fucking asshole." I pointed my finger at him. I go, "You're a fucking asshole." And Julie was like, "Get her out of here." And then Wrestling with Shadows documentary people were also back there, so everybody was filming everything, and like it was just chaotic. And then Vince went in there, and then when he came back out, he had a big shiner. So Bret hit him in the face.
Yeah, I heard about that. That's one part I did hear. I heard Bret got a good shot in on him. And then
Well, he told him to get out. He said, "I told him to get out, or I'm going to hit you." And Bret was trying to, Bret knew he could not, refrain from hitting him.
Oh, especially after
warned him. He's like, "Get out, I'm going to hit you." And he didn't get out. And Vince was trying to say sorry or something, and Bret hit him.
And
I don't think he was trying to say sorry. He was just trying to explain why he had to do it or whatever.
Yeah, probably trying, to give him his old, business pitch, so to speak.
I understand Vince's point now. But why did he have to do that? Like, why didn't he just get Bret to drop the belt the next day like they said they would?
Exactly.
Bret just didn't want to do it in Canada, which I didn't think. Bret had creative control. Out of all the wrestlers at that time, Bret was the only one that had creative control of his character and what happens to him. And the reason he got that was because there was a wrestling fan in Toronto. His name is Carl DeMarco. And I remember Carl would always pick us up at the airport in a limousine, and he would take us to wherever, a restaurant, or he just was always so available. And his job was, he was the kind of guy that companies hired to go in and shake the place up. So he'd go into a company and start firing people and finding out where the money was being lost, and he'd just, restructure, reorganize a company to save it. This is what this Carl DeMarco did. So Carl went into Bret's discussions with Vince, his contract discussions, and it was Carl DeMarco that said, "You need to have this, you need to have that." And so because of that, Bret had control of his character and what happened to it. But he didn't, not at that point. And so for Bret to ask to maintain his title in Canada and lose it in the United States was not really far off for him to ask.
No, it really wasn't.
It was just much. It seemed like just like a power struggle. Like on Vince's part, it's just like, well, give him what he wants and let him go. He did you a good job, and Vince was the one who, at that point, needed to let Bret go because he was losing a lot of money. The business wasn't doing very well at that point.
Yeah, and he couldn't honor the 20-year deal that
I think he could have, but at a loss or whatever. So, I understand, he was letting Bret out of the contract, like he was.
Okay.
But Bret was also doing him a favor by leaving. And Bret was so loyal. He was so loyal to Vince. Out of everybody, he was a loyalist.
That's one, I'm kind of with you, I kind of see Vince's point there as to why, but then it's that last statement that you said, because I always felt this way too. Bret was one of Vince's most loyal guys. I mean, he's right up there, with The Undertaker and, guys like that, one of the cornerstones of the company, and his
word, Bret's word was his word, he was an honorable man.
Exactly, because some other people weren't honest with Vince. You would think that he should have been able to trust Bret with how loyal that
Yeah.
he's been. But was the feeling in the arena any different, from any other wrestling show? Like when you stepped into the arena that day before anything happened, was there a different feeling
No,
in the air?
no one suspected anything. Like everything seemed on the up and up.
Wow.
I know they had a few meetings about possible different outcomes and this and that, but Bret was confident that everything was going to play out. Like even for Bret to accept that Vince had to let him go, because that hurt Bret. I think it really affected him. He didn't want to go, even if it was for more money. Like he liked his job. He liked where he was at.
Yeah, I know.
He loved his job.
There was just so much frustration going on at the time, with Shawn Michaels, and that's where the whole thing came in too. He didn't want to drop the belt to Shawn Michaels, and in a way, I don't blame Bret, because they had real life heat, and I know the next night on Monday Night Raw, I believe it was in Ottawa, Canada. They were going from Montreal to Ottawa, and that's when Bret was supposed to come out and just relinquish the title, and then a new champion would be crowned, back in the States at a later date. But, I remember all of this, pretty well, and I really feel for Bret, everything that went on, the way it did, and that, everything he had to go through with Shawn, because I know at the end there, it was not good between them at all.
Yeah, and it turned out to be the best thing for Vince. I mean, he took a negative and made it a positive. Then we got the great Vince McMahon heel character out of all that.
Yeah, and that also turned into the Stone Cold Steve Austin effect,
Yeah, the Attitude Era.
It really made, for a big boom. But one thing that was cool is what happened, 13 years later, when Bret came back. And
Well, I always said, I go, that was going to be the biggest draw if Vince and Bret ever got back in the ring and, had an angle with that. But, yeah, when Bret came back, it was meant to be. Like, there's always a possibility. There's still a possibility that someday Owen will be in the Hall of Fame. You can't say never. Not in this business.
Exactly. Were you at...
We can hope.
Exactly. Were you at the arena with the rest of the Hart family for when Bret got his revenge on Vince?
No. I think at that point, when my sister and Bret divorced, it's kind of like I was out too.
Oh,
which is sad. I was really close with Bret. I was, he would often call me his little sister or like a sister. But, when, like any kind of a divorce, when two people divide, a family divides, and some people go on one side, of course I stay with my sister.
Oh, exactly.
And it was nasty for a long time. So, they're good now. I mean, we're all grandparents, and, I do see him at family occasions because of the grandchildren, right?
Exactly.
And my nieces and nephews and my great nieces and nephews. So we're all kind of end up the same christening or a wedding but back then when they first separated, it wasn't good.
Time healed it. It just takes
as
time.
much as it can be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to heal it 100%, obviously, but, pretty much when time goes by, it'll heal as much as it can, and then when it reaches, that point, that's it. It's as good as it could be.
Yeah, and, it's fine. We're going to be traveling here soon, and I think I'll be seeing him.
Oh, that should be nice.
Yeah.
Now I have one more question about the past things in wrestling, and then we can move on to what you're doing today and talk about the future. The whole Chris Benoit tragedy and situation. Like you've mentioned to me, that you've been interviewed about it, and I that was a tragedy that just shook professional wrestling to its very foundation, and just so tragic. And
Yeah.
I know
It
Brett.
was it was actually it was actually Bret that recommended to CNN to interview me, and it was because Chris Benoit really idolized Tom. And yeah, like even as a young boy, just like how I said I first saw wrestling as a youth, and he too saw wrestling as a youth, and he always was at the wrestling in Edmonton, and I remember him as a little scrawny kid, and then soon he got some weights, and he was getting bigger, and then he was training up at the dungeon, and he was so good, and he did resemble Tom in every way. And Tom even passed on his boots to Chris.
Wow.
Because I had to deliver those boots to Chris one night at the wrestling and say, here's the boots. Now I don't know where those boots are. I think his son David might have them.
Oh, okay.
They're like the white boots. Tom wore the white boots before he was the British Bulldog.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, he
And
had white with a bit of silver on it.
yeah. And
Had a few pairs of those, but one pair he gave to Chris as a
the,
token of, I'm passing my legacy on to you.
and there was so many similarities between the two, to their look, to their wrestling style, and
Yeah, but and Chris never had Tom's short fuse. Like he did not have that side, because Tom was like the best friend. Like if he was your friend and he liked you, he was the best. He was like generous and funny and great to be around. But if he didn't like you, ugh, you didn't want to be on that side.
yeah.
But Chris, yeah, and Chris didn't have that in him. Chris was just a sweet boy and grew up to be a sweet man.
It seemed
So
like
it's shocking to even hear that happened. Like everybody is just what happened. But now, what we've learned about the CTE and Chris's brain and the damage from the flying headbutts that Tom did too. And I think Tom had the similar things. Like when Tom was being so violent in the end of our marriage, I'm sure that's when CTE was starting to take over for him.
you know what I would say you're right on that, because back in the day, they didn't even know that CTE existed. They didn't know until the advanced technology came out, and it's
Well, even when I did that interview for CNN, I didn't know about it. I just know that Tom was, was taking steroids and prescription drugs, and the steroids were causing his injuries. Like the doctors said that it's, for some people, the side effects are different for everybody. And for some people, it makes them more aggressive. For some people, it makes your soft tissues and tendons like brittle, and that's what it was doing to Tom, was his ligaments,
oh wow.
and his discs, and it was affecting all that. For some people, you cause strokes. Tom's had friends that had a stroke from taking steroids. So you never know, right? And so these injuries, he's still got to work. In wrestling, you can't stop wrestling to heal. You could, but if you did that, you're going to lose your spot.
Exactly. Yep. All that
Right?
momentum you
So
built,
you
it's
work so
gone.
hard to get to a certain place on the card, and then if you get injured, you just keep working. They don't have insurance. Like there's no compensation for wrestlers. Vince did, though, to his credit. Tom was getting, when he hurt his shoulder and he was getting an operation, Vince did give him $10,000, I believe, a week to just keep him going until it healed up.
Oh, well, that's a nice thing.
But I think that was just a favor. I don't think he did that for everybody.
Yeah.
But so then he became addicted to the prescription drugs and just the traveling. Like once he took me, well, not once, quite a few times he'd take me on an easy trip, and it would usually be like California and Nevada and those areas when it's like a easy circle. But we usually started like Toronto, maybe New York, and then right across to the eastern or the western side of the United States, and then the easy part started, like Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco. But I was like, this was exhausting. I was like, all we do is like go to the airport, eat hot dogs, like eat some pretzels, go to the hotel, try and get to the gym, try and get to the laundry, go to the arena, hope to God that you can find some food when the wrestling was over, and then do it all over again. Go back to the airport, go, eat some pretzels, eat a hot dog. And I was like, this is an easy trip?
Yeah, you're like, this ain't easy.
I'm like, yeah, it's not Stu's van with the floorboards, seeing the highway, but it was grueling, and that was the easy trip. So, and they wrestled more than they were home, that's for sure.
I can only imagine, how the hard trips must have been.
Yeah, so just that took a toll, I think, on his body, the injuries, and then became addicted to the things to wake up, things to stay awake, things to,
Yeah.
uppers, downers, and all-arounders, I always said, and, the little fanny packs that the wrestlers wore in the 80s, I was like, there's a drugstore in there.
Oh, yeah, they'd always have their fanny packs on, actually.
Yeah, the packed fanny packs.
Yeah, the Patriot.
Not all of them. I'm just saying, for Tom, that's how it was for him.
Well, the Patriot, he told my audience a couple stories, a few years back, that in his case it was Mr. Perfect that had, the fanny pack, and he would have the pills in there and whatnot, and
well, I remember just talking to them, and they just reach in there, and they didn't, I don't know if they knew if they were taking a Quaalude or a Percocet or, what they were taking. They just, a Valium, Halcyon, like it was all in there.
And,
popping those.
I know.
And they had such a high tolerance.
Oh, they build up such high tolerances. It's amazing. Like, well, one thing.
But eventually that's all going to take a toll. So, I think for Tom, though, the combination of the drinking, the prescription drugs, the injuries, and the CTE that was probably happening, and he was having seizures. That's why at the end there, he always had his sunglasses on, because he said he would see flashes of light before he had a seizure, and he thought if he wore his sunglasses, he wouldn't get a seizure. So it was just sort of a way to prevent it, he said. But he even wore them at night in the bar.
Wow. I'm just thinking too, it's like you said, you can't, when these wrestlers get hurt, you can't just step away. They had to find a way to keep going, and that's what happened to...
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I was going to tell you...
Go ahead.
When the doctor... we went to the doctor the last time. I was pregnant with our third child, and we went to the doctor because his neck was sore, and they did x-rays and everything on it, and he's like, you have x-rays of a 67-year-old man, like your neck bones are almost bone on bone.
Oh my God.
Because the discs are so worn down, and they're like one hit to your neck, and you can be paralyzed from the neck down. I said, Tom, you do not have to wrestle anymore. Our house was paid off. Like, we didn't spend that much money, and we bought a house that didn't cost a lot, and it was such a good investment. When we bought it, it was $220,000, and when we sold it for $475,000. So we were able to take the money and buy another house and completely pay off a house with 5 acres just north of Cochrane, a beautiful little town just west of Calgary. And it was totally paid for. I'm like, you do not need to go to Japan. You do not need to wrestle anymore. Like, you could train people. And Stu, he had one of Stu's rings in our backyard, and he was training his brother Mark, who came over from England. And I said, we don't need any money. I could go be a waitress. You could go pump gas at the gas station. We don't need that much money to live. And he got really mad at me. He was like, nobody charged me to wrestle, to learn how to wrestle. Like, he didn't see it as an opportunity. Or I said, I'm sure somebody will give you a job in the office somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure.
And Japan would have built a world-class Dynamite Kid wrestling school probably in our backyard if we asked them, if they were interested, if we pitched the idea. But he just wouldn't, like, he just had this whole like loss of identity once the wrestling, when he couldn't wrestle to the ability, to the quality that he had wrestled his whole life. It just ate him up.
It's got to be sad when something like that happens,
No, and it was getting really bad with the drinking and the drugs, and I'm pregnant. We have 2 other children, and I asked him to stop drinking so many times. And I'd find the bottles around the house, and so I just one day he came home with sometimes he would just leave. He'd leave for like 3 days.
Oh.
And I was pregnant. I didn't want to tell anybody that he was doing this because I'd get upset. And I'm like, well, if I really needed something, I would phone my sister to bring it to me. But, and I think he's just drowning his sorrows. Like, he just couldn't handle that he wasn't Dynamite Kid anymore.
Yeah.
Because he had just found out about one hit to the neck and you're dead, or you're paralyzed.
Yeah.
And he did. He went back to Japan. This was like in 1990, like September 1990. They told us that.
I can't believe he actually went back.
Yeah, and then when he came back from Japan, he spent most of the money over there. Because he's very generous, like I say, with his friends. Like, he was buying steak dinners, he's buying them Hard Rock Cafe jackets, like he was supposed to come home with $20,000, he comes home with $6,000, and I'm like, okay, well, you're not going to number one, you shouldn't be wrestling at all. Number two, $6,000 is not going to last us till your next tour, which was in the spring.
Yeah.
I was like, we need a budget. So I started like trying to budget us, and he just like, I'm having a fucking cigarette. Put that on your budget. Put that on your list. Because I was like, I was only trying to help us, right?
Yeah.
I was trying to show him that we cannot afford this lifestyle anymore. So that's the last time he went out. It was New Year's. He went to the Texas Gate. It's a cowboy bar in Cochrane, and he went out with some friends and his little brother. He's taking his 16-year-old brother to the bar, to strippers, to brought him home, and it was like almost midnight, and the kids were still up because I had went out with my girlfriend, was a waitress at a restaurant, so we, were in the city because Cochrane's a little ways away from Calgary. We had pizza. We had a little bit of a New Year's there with the kids, and I'm pregnant, so we went back to I guess it was about 10 o'clock when he came back. But his like face is cut open, his skin's hanging there. He has blood all over his white sweatshirt. Like the kids had never saw him like this because I made sure those kids were in bed and they never saw their dad drunk or out of control. But here he is, drunk, full of blood, and I'm like, "What happened?" He goes, "I fucking fell down. I fucking fell down." And I was like, the kids are crying. I put them to bed, and then he tells me that he wouldn't take his sunglasses off in the bar. It was New Year's. He wouldn't pay the New Year's coverage. He absolutely refused, even though he had about 10 people with him. And so when those 10 people, Tom had to go to the washroom, those 10 people left out into their vehicles. They were waiting for Tom. Tom got the boots, like some cowboys put the boots to him.
Oh, wow.
Well, he's drunk. And I was like, Tom always said every dog has his day. And what goes up comes down. And just like John Foley, I was like, now you turned into John Foley. It was very sad. Anyway, just to save my kids and save myself, I did contemplate killing myself and my kids at one point during all this. Because I was like, I can't live like this anymore. Like, it's terrible.
Was it just depression of the whole lifestyle taking over?
Well, and I was isolated, and I was hiding the fact that, what was going on with the marriage, because they knew what was going on. If you read Bret's book, they knew what was going on, but in my mind, I didn't want them to know any more than what they already knew, if you know what I mean. So It's just a part of the cycle of violence, so I went to a mental health clinic because I was like, I wanted to kill myself and I wanted to kill my kids because I didn't want to leave my kids with him. I didn't know what was going to happen with my kids if this is what he was doing with his little brother.
Yeah.
So when I couldn't do it, I called mental health, and she said, come in, and we have someone to watch the kids. And so Browan was like 6 years old, and Merrick was 2.5, and I was pregnant with our third. So I took the kids in there, and she goes, you're in a cycle of violence. And it sounds stupid, but when you're actually in a cycle of violence, you don't know it. Like, just to survive, you have denial, you have, you're codependent on your perpetrator. Like, there's just a whole bunch of things going on. And there's a whole bunch of things going on for him, too.
And your mind is just...
So she goes, you got 3 choices. You kill yourself. And I go, well, I tried that. I thought of that, but I don't have the guts. And she goes, no, you have survival instincts. Your survival instincts kicked in. That's why you didn't do it. It's not because you're not courageous. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, lady. She goes, or, he quits drinking and he gets some professional help. And I go, well, we've been trying that for years and it doesn't work. And she goes, or you leave him. And I'm like, what? Leave him? How can I leave him? I have nothing. I have no education. I have no way to support these kids. Like, I have 3 kids. Like, she's like, well, there's welfare and you can go back to school. And I'm like, school? Like, every step of the way, I needed someone to hold my hands. And when I did that CNN interview about Chris Benoit, I just wanted people to recognize the signs of suicide or the signs of domestic violence. Like, I don't know what their marriage was like. And honestly, I don't know. All I know is Chris, when he was a kid at the wrestling, or I saw him at the wrestling. I do not have privy to their private lives, but I'm just saying my experience has been, if someone's in a cycle of violence, there are signs. And if someone's contemplating suicide or they're depressed, these are the signs. And that's why I did the interview, because I wanted to make people aware of things. But that all got chopped up and put on the editing floor.
So they ran it through their editing stuff. It wasn't like on live TV.
Well, what was focused on was that Tom had held a shotgun to my head once. That was focused on. And because of that, all the other stuff, the reason I did it was to help other people who might be in the same situation, be it the perpetrator, because they need help, or be it the victim, they need to leave, or they need to know to access help. I think people that are in those situations really need people around them to show them the way. Because I can't believe how blinded I was back then. Like, I'm not that same girl. Like, not at all.
And did you just?
Oh, so after speaking to that lady, I went to the bank. You know that little $6,000 we had?
Yeah.
Well, at that point we had $3,000 in there, and I took $1,500 and bought him a one-way ticket back to England.
Oh,
and
wow.
So then I had $1,500 to live on in January when he went back. Pregnant. This was in January, and Amaris was born April 14th. So I went to welfare, and I said, I need a restraining order. I need to get a restraining order, and I can't afford it. And they're like, no, you don't. You need welfare. And I'm like, what? They're like, well, how are you going to feed your kids? I'm like, well, I have $1,500. I'm like, that's not going to last.
Yeah.
So like I'm saying, I needed the people at the welfare to tell me what to do. I needed them to tell me where to go to get, to get my upgrading and to go to school and how to get a student loan and every step of the way. So if there's anyone out there listening and you're in a situation right now, just phone a crisis line. There's, call 911 and ask them to give you a number. Because sometimes it takes somebody to start the ball rolling.
Yeah, and that, when you went there, it seems like that was your spark, and, you got out of this relationship right after that.
Well, and then, he went back to England, and he didn't really keep in contact with the kids. Amaris was born, and I think he had Johnny Smith phone and ask his wife is my best friend, was my best friend. She went, I don't know, things happened.
Yeah.
But we lost connection over the years. Like I've lost a lot of friends just due to a lifestyle change. Like I went back to school and became a teacher, and I wasn't in wrestling at all. Like, especially when Julie was not with Bret anymore, wrestling was not a part of our world anymore. We didn't go up to Stu and Helen's for Sunday dinners. We might bump into people, but that's about it. We weren't entrenched into the wrestling anymore. Not until my daughter started dating a wrestler did I go to wrestling. And when I went to wrestling after 20 years of being away from it, I was trying to help out the crowd, or help out the promoter by, screaming and yelling like, "Hair ref," and, "Go eat a hot dog," and just so getting into the chants and screaming. And when wrestling was over, I felt so good. I was like, it was such a cathartic effect. Like the ancient Greeks really got it, even though I was pretending to be a crazy fan, it felt so good. Like it was the best, this was the best pill ever. Just go to a wrestling match. Go to a wrestling match, yell and scream, and see how good you feel afterwards. It's the best drug ever. Anyway, I was hooked. I was so hooked again, and I was like, oh, I miss it. And the indie wrestling is even better than WWE.
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like you're so disconnected, you're so distant, everything's so far away. You got to look on the Jumbotron to be up close, and you're closer when you watch TV. But at an indie show, you're right there.
Oh, yeah, it's very intimate.
You can smell it. It's amazing. I love my indie wrestling.
I do too. And I'll tell you, I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you said, how actually going to a live wrestling match, is it gives you a feeling like no other. It's the best drug. It's like that all natural high when you go to a wrestling match live. And I'm so glad that you said this because I always tell my story and tell people I feel the same way. I feel the exact same way you do, and I've had people tell me that I'm nuts.
No, and I know a lot of people, even highly educated, like professors, that go just to watch the wrestling fans and go just to scream so they feel good too afterwards. Like it's great. Like for $10, I'm like, do you know how many years I went to therapy and such and such? And I'm a recovering alcoholic as well, so I haven't drank since 2007. Like I'm no saint. My therapist said that, oh yeah, that you were self-medicating and that's how you got through everything. And, but now here's you raw, like sober, and going to wrestling, like, is the best thing. And so when the way I got involved in the wrestling is the ring announcer didn't show up one day. And so the promoter for RCW, Squiggy, was looking for somebody. My daughter's boyfriend said, Michelle could do it, Bronwyn's mom. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a teacher. I'm on the mic all the time. Like I can talk in front of like 2,000 people. It's not a big deal. But, it's like, geez, when I got in there, I was like, whoa, it is a big deal. Like a ring announcer has to run the whole show. You have to have the timing. You have to interview all the guys and girls and know where they're from and how much they weigh. And things happen, like, a wrestling rope falls off and you got to entertain the crowd. You got to make sure people know the next upcoming shows. And I was like, you work the whole time. Unlike like the wrestlers work for their match, but the ring announcer works the whole time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But I just absolutely loved it. So that was like 2013. And I loved being the ring announcer.
And then...
as you can tell from my photo.
Yeah, oh, yeah. You look right at home.
My photo.
You look right at home in that ring. And did you start in 2013 with Hart Legacy Wrestling, or?
No, it was with RCW.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, the big show they had on in 2013, the Hart. Are you talking about the really big show they had? The first one?
Yes.
Yeah, and that one we just walked out, but I did work backstage. Like, I wasn't a ring announcer. Bob Leonard was the announcer for that show, who is a legend. He's the one, if you see all the pictures, Passion and Pain by Heath McCoy, like those photographs, the black and white photographs of Bret and Tom when they were younger, and Davey for Stampede Wrestling, those are all taken by Bob Leonard.
Oh,
he
wow.
was he was the promoter in Regina.
That's amazing.
So he ran the wrestling in Regina for Stu.
How long have you been the ring announcer at Hart Legacy Wrestling? How long were you in RCW, and then how did Hart Legacy Wrestling come about?
Well, RCW was just a couple of years because my daughter was a part of TNT, and she's a Dynamite doll, and her and her husband, because she ended up marrying him, he was Dynamite Dan, and then they divorced. So they divorced a couple of years later. And so when when there's a divorce, it's like you choose sides, and Bronwyn didn't want anything to do with the wrestling anymore, and so I'm like, okay, I'm going to. I can't work there if her ex-husband is working there.
Yeah.
So I didn't work for them for a while. But then I kind of went back and, and I did some guest announcing, did more announcing for Hart Legacy, and we just started up again in January, Hart Legacy.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you started up again, and then they put you in the ring as the ring announcer.
Yeah, well, yeah. But because before when I worked for her, it was backstage doing interviews and filming and things like that, and in the background, which are very important too. All those people there's so many. It takes so many people to get a show up and running. Everyone's important.
How important was that tribute show for Tom and Hart Legacy Wrestling? Because I watched that clip on YouTube, when everybody was in the ring and Teddy introduced you, and how important was
that was so touching for my daughter Bronwyn. It was when Tom passed away December 5th. My daughter just found out that she was pregnant. She was very ill at the time. Like, I don't even think she could have flown to England. So it was like 2 of my kids didn't have passports. And it was like, okay, well, it's just before Christmas. It's like, do we fly them all to England to go to their father's funeral? There's nobody there that really that they could stay with, or, then all the work that they would miss and to cut, so they didn't go because they were able to Skype the funeral in to Bronwyn's living room.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that amazing? Technology is so amazing. But it was 5:00 in the morning, and we went to Bronwyn's house. We all met there, and we watched Tom's funeral on the Skype.
That's amazing how technology is now,
Yeah, but and I built a little memorial there for the kids to look at. I had his wrestling tights and a picture and his book and a Japanese magazine and some candles, and and we had the computer, and her cousin Craig filmed it on his phone, and we were able to put it through to my... I know it wasn't Skype. It was something else these kids do nowadays. I know I sound like a grandma, but I am a grandma. I don't know what these kids do nowadays. Like, I don't know, it was some chat room, or I don't know what it was, but it wasn't Skype. But it was like Skype.
Yeah, there's
but
so
we watched
many
the
of
funeral.
them.
Yeah, and at one point they told me to be quiet because they said, the people will hear me. I was like, what? Because I wanted to say, oh, why didn't they play that other song he liked? Or, they're like, Mom, shh. But, so even though we were a part of it, we didn't feel like a part of it, you know what I mean? Like, Bronwyn wanted to say some words, and we weren't able to do that. I guess the funeral home didn't have that technology to Skype her in properly for her to give a eulogy or anything.
Oh.
So for her to have that 10-bell salute, it meant a lot to my daughter.
That was a very touching video. I did see that.
Yeah, and then there was 10-bell salutes all over the world, and Harry had one that he had posted that he's holding Tom's picture, and it was beautiful too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It was kind of sad that WWE kind of, just put him under the rug. But again, with the image thing, and then what I said on CNN, I was like, I don't know if that is why he doesn't want the Bulldogs in the Hall of Fame or not. Or, like, maybe he doesn't care either way. I don't know. But I know a lot of people do want Tom and Davey in the Hall of Fame, and I certainly do too, because you know what? End of the day, they deserve it. Because you're in there because of your wrestling ability, not because you divorced your wife or you had a rough spot in your marriage or, whatever. Like, I'm not saying that Tom was a saint and he, but nobody is. You can probably pick 5 guys out of the Hall of Fame and say, this one did that and this one did this.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be based on your personal life. It's based on your wrestling, your
And
legacy of your wrestling ability.
Tom is a legend, and so is Davey, and that just me.
Well, I don't know if you've read. There's two tributes that were written about Tom that were just. I'm like, you guys said it exactly right. And the first one is my daughter's tribute to her father. That was so touching. And then the second one is Bruce Hart's, where Bruce is the one who brought Tom over here. Bruce is the one who recognized, and poor Bruce, he doesn't get the recognition he deserves. You should read his book too, if you really want to. Straight from the Heart, it's called. But he gives the Booker side of Stampede Wrestling. The other perspective that other people don't see. Like you hear about Tom's perspective in his book and Bret's perspective. Like, read Bruce's perspective of those two.
Yeah.
Very interesting, very interesting. And Bruce was the one who said that, Tom is the greatest of all time, bar none.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, well, shouldn't the greatest of all time be in the Hall of Fame?
Oh, exactly. That would be my first thought too. Someone that's being considered or being called the greatest of all time, they should be in a Hall of Fame. There's no reason why they shouldn't.
But you don't know why they're not. Like, is it because they're English? Is it because their personal lives had some rough patches? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. None of us will ever know. We could always speculate, but we'll never truly know. And that just makes
Well,
me
I think
think.
if the fans keep voicing their opinion, and maybe certainly he'll listen someday. I know there is a campaign for Davey. He has over 22,000 signatures, I believe, now for him to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, like Davey, he gave his body for the sport, and it goes back to your point, like you said earlier. Wrestlers, when they got hurt back in the day, they could not just step away. They didn't want to lose their spot, so it resorted, to these prescription pills and all this stuff and the drinking. And poor Davey, it happened to him when he got back body dropped on that ring that had the trap door underneath it in WCW. And I remember the story
Yes,
when Davey was talking about, he had the just crippling back pain, and it was so bad for him. And he got started with everything, just to keep going. And I felt for him. I felt for him.
This summer, I was cutting my dog's coat on the deck, and so I was kneeling on my knees for it seemed like 2 hours. And when I got up, my knee, like, I don't know what I did to it, but for the rest of the summer, my knee was bothering me. Like, I couldn't sit down on the floor with my grandbaby. I had a job in the summer at the Stampede. I was working in the bank as a cashier, and I had to go down on my knees to get the coins out of this machine, and I just couldn't imagine. I'm like, these men, and ladies, wrestle with more than a knee injury, right? Like, some of them. And I was like, I just can't believe what they must go through. Because not only are they wrestling, they're traveling, they're working out still.
Yeah.
So it's unbelievable what the sacrifice they do to themselves for their work. I appreciate wrestling so much. It's so difficult. Like, my daughter trained to be a wrestler with Bad News Allen. Amaris, the baby I had once Tom went back to England, he never did meet her. So, like, my daughter Amaris has to live with that for the rest of her life, that she never met her father. And people say, he's the greatest guy, blah, 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 but she's like, I don't know him. I don't know him at all. And I'm like, you know what? You're really funny, just like him, because he was so funny. He could really tell a good story and get everybody laughing.
Laughter is the best medicine sometimes. I mean, well, for me, wrestling is the best medicine. Then I would say laughter.
Yeah.
But yo, we touched on everybody. We touched on everybody from the whole Hart family to Natty, and everybody that that was on your list. That I was talking about. One person we didn't touch on yet is Tyson Kidd. Tyson Kidd, TJ. I know. He was the last graduate out of the Hard Dungeon, and I remember, when he got hurt. Oh my God, it was terrible, and such a great wrestler. I really miss seeing him in the ring.
I know.
How's he doing?
And I couldn't believe that. Did you see the picture of his stitches on the neck?
Yes, I saw that.
And he posted that. I was like, oh my goodness. The good thing about that story, though, is that, Vince still uses Tyson. Like, he still has a job with them. And just like Tom, I'm sure if Tom would have went to Vince and said, they said one hit to my neck and it's over, Vince would have given him another job, another role. He did really like him. But I know Tom was had the short fuse, but I know if he would have straightened out his act, got some help, healed himself a bit, he could have had an office job.
Yeah. Oh, I don't doubt it either.
Vince was really good to Tom. Like, he respected him, and even when Tom was in England, Vince would ask Bret, like, how is he doing, and have you heard from him? And it's like, so he actually cared.
And that's one thing that matters.
Yeah.
How is Tyson doing today with his job, or even with his neck? Has he been in good shape? Have you heard anything about him?
Well, I see him posting online, like, his workouts, and other people follow his plans. I think he's got a very disciplined, stringent workouts that, and people that have worked with him, and I think he's training in necks, isn't he?
I believe so. Yes, I believe I believe they do have him down there in NXT doing something, and I know he's like a backstage producer as well. They got him involved doing that.
Yeah, and they're both big cat lovers, but I guess you know that from the reality show.
Yep.
As is Teddy. We haven't talked about Teddy.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Teddy. Doesn't Teddy travel with the cat?
Yeah, he's got is it Mr. Velvet now?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, he's doing really well. Like, he wrestles for us, but he's also with MLW.
Oh, I've heard of them.
Yeah. So he has the mid-heavyweight belt with them, and also the tag team belt with Davey Boy Smith Jr., which is Harry.
Wow, that's amazing.
Diana and Davey's son.
That's amazing. That sounds like the perfect tag team right there.
Well, Teddy's had a lot of trials and tribulations. He's got a colorful past, that boy. I'm like a huge Teddy fan.
I like Teddy a lot too. I've seen a few matches from him, and I always wondered, I'm like, when is Teddy gonna show up in WWE? I wonder, but now,
Well, he was there as a young man. He was one of the youngest ever signed with WWE, in a contract, a developing contract.
Oh, developmental? Okay.
Yeah.
He might end up getting there one day. If not, hey, he might even end up.
I don't know if he wants to be there though.
Oh, okay.
It's just like Harry. Like, Harry's doing so well too in Japan, and with MLW. Like, those boys are always going, always traveling.
And who knows what doors are going to open up for them now with AEW, that All Elite Wrestling that's going to be opening up in May.
Yeah. And there's something going on in, is there an NXT in UK?
Yes, they got NXT UK now. Yep.
Yeah, so there's opportunities everywhere, which is good. Like wrestling seems to have a resurgence of interest. Because that's another thing I was going to say. Once you're a wrestling fan, you're always a wrestling fan.
Yeah, you never fall out of it, and if you do,
you never fall out of love of wrestling.
Yeah, that's right. And for people that have, because I've heard of people that have said before, oh, I used to watch that. That means they were probably either
they just haven't been to a show for a while. That's all. Somebody has to take them to a show.
Exactly. Either that or they were just more of a casual and. It wasn't really their thing all the way, but for me, I'll love it forever.
My granddaughter is 10, and we've been taking her for a few years, and she just absolutely loves it.
Oh,
my granddaughter, Miami, and I was like, oh, she was in the ring actually for the 10-bell salute. And then she was watching me do the ring announcing. She's like, Grandma, can I see your cards? And I was like, yeah, here's my cards. And I was like, would you like to do that someday? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I'm going to get you in the ring. So it's like it's even starting now for her. And, Tom has two nephews, Mark and Thomas Billington. Mark is 17 and Thomas is 15. And they've been training with Marty Jones over there in England for 9 months now. Wow. They had their first match a few weeks ago. And they're incredible. They did all the moves that Tom and Tiger Mask did in the famous or Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask match. They were doing the nip-ups and the, working on the ropes and the super kicks. And I'm like, gosh, these guys have only been wrestling for 9 months and they can do all those moves. Like, not to the standard of Tom, but, I mean, higher than anybody else I've seen working for about 5 years,
Yeah.
So they just have a real natural ability. And Mark was telling me, this is Tom's little brother. This is the same little brother that Tom brought over, just before I sent him packing. The little brother said, the boys were asking me to take them to a wrestling school. And I said, yeah, next month. And pretty soon, they asked a few times, and they're like, okay, Dad, you said you were taking us. When are you taking us? We want a straight answer. And he's like, yeah, but, he goes, I was trying to just get them to forget about it. He goes, but they wouldn't forget about it. And I took them, and he goes, they're just natural. Just like how Tom was, just natural ability. So that just really makes me happy and excited that, Tom's legacy is living on, of course, through our children, through the fans, and these two young men, and they're called the Dynamite Duo. You can Google them. They're just young boys, but, when you're watching them, just think about 5 years from now, because that's about how long it takes for you to hone all your skills and be the best at your craft.
Yeah.
5 years from now, they're just going to take the world by storm. They're supposed to come here in the summer, so I'm hoping Miami does something that's my granddaughter again,
mm-hmm.
to lead them out, or my daughter, Bronwyn.
I'm telling you, I really think that they are going to get somewhere and do big things in this business. And the name is perfect.
Marty Jones is an amazing trainer, athlete, wrestler. He's infamous as well. So just they're getting the same type of training that Tom received when he was younger.
Yeah.
The same type.
And, they have a perfect name, to start off with. I mean, to be a tag team and be the Dynamite Duo, it's a great name. I think it's going to catch on.
And the one, because they're my nephews, the one that looks like Tom, his name is Thomas Billington. He has the exact same name as his uncle.
Wow.
And he looks like him.
Yeah, and you know what? A new generation Dynamite Kid might be on the way. You know.
Dynamite Kids. We get two of them.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good name for the tag team too. The Dynamite Kids.
Yeah. Yeah, Dynamite Duo kind of reminds me of Batman and Robin Hood, but that's okay.
Yeah. I'm looking.
Another thing is, my daughter Bronwyn, the Dynamite doll, she's pregnant, and she's having a baby July 4th. And then my son Merrick, his wife is pregnant, and she's having a baby July 1st.
Wow.
So I was like, there we go again. Like, we got Canada Day is July 1st, and your Independence Day in America is July 4th. So I was like, it's perfect. We're going to have two more, Dynamite Kid grandchildren in July on those 2 days.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
It is. It is, and we already know that Bronwyn is having a girl and Merrick is having a boy.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Some more extended
so,
family.
Life is very exciting, very good.
Yeah, it is.
I know,
you know what it is.
Sad things happen, but if sad things are happening to you guys out there, anyone who's listening, and I know I've been there to a point where it's like, you just can't even imagine the next minute, let alone the next day. Things do look up. You just got to hang in there, and you got to reach out. Get some help. Talk to somebody. Be truthful.
Yeah?
Tell somebody how you're hurting.
Yeah, hiding it is, it's a terrible thing, to hide something like that.
Well, it's part of coping and it's part of denial. So I understand that part too, where you're like, well, if I pretend I'm okay, then I'll be okay. But you get to a point where no, that's you can't keep doing that.
You gotta try to move on and get better and all that.
Yeah.
I'm looking here. I see 2 more questions from fans. I see here. Wow, we got a pretty good crowd here too. Let me see. Where's the first one? Because I kinda gotta go back here in the chat. Okay. One viewer says they saw that Conan was on Hart Legacy Wrestling. They're curious, how is Conan? Have you got a chance to work with him or do anything with him in the wrestling business?
Well, Conan was there because Teddy had worked for AAA Wrestling, and Conan was in partnership. And it was the first time I had seen all these Mexican wrestlers. They tore up the house with their ability, and we had other people too. We have John Morrison. We had lots of other people that were flying, but I was so impressed with the AAA wrestling. And Conan was the one who brought them all up. And we did that for 2 shows, because the next show, it wasn't Hart Legacy. It was Next Generation.
Oh, okay.
But it was the same. It was a different name, but it was the same people that were putting it together. And it was the second show was mainly Teddy and BJ Annis' father.
Oh, wow.
But both shows were like, I had never seen anything like that in my life. Like,
that sounds
Necro Butcher was at that second show. I don't think I ever saw a hardcore match to that caliber, up front and personal. Like, I could put my finger in the scars. Like, that guy's incredible.
Oh, I'll tell you, hardcore matches, I gotta admit, I like those. I've seen a few of them in my day.
Oh my goodness, And Jack Evans, I don't know if you know of Jack Evans,
Yes.
but that guy is incredible,
Oh, yes.
fantastic. He worked for us in January as well, and we're hoping to get him again this month. But we had a little problem with the weather. He was detained in Denver last time.
Oh, probably.
But when he and Teddy wrestle, you never see anything as good as that right now. Like when those two wrestle together.
I'll have to look and see.
I don't know.
If I could find a match on the internet somewhere of Teddy and Jack.
Well, I have one. I have it posted because they wrestled for Hart Legacy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll definitely look
So yeah,
that
you
up.
can find it on my my wall.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely look it up because that'd be something I'd like to see. Let's see.
Well, I am going to put some links on in a private message so that you see all these shows.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I would appreciate that.
See it. Yeah, and we had Jungle Boy in. You know, he was Jack Perry.
Yes, yes.
Luke Perry's son. Yeah, it's so tragic. You know, he was there the night we did the 10-bell salute, so it's just strange how a month later, like, his father passed away, so it's so sudden, you know? Like, Tom was 60.
Yeah.
That's very young.
That is young.
But Luke Perry, he was only 52. It doesn't seem right, does it?
It's terrible, and, you know, I also saw Brian Pillman Jr., you know, he was there too.
Oh, yes, and, you know, like, we were good friends with his father, and just, it was just like seeing Brian again, and just the way he talks, his mannerisms, how he's such a sweet boy like his dad, and I gave him instant hugs, instant love, because he's the epitome of his father. And an excellent athlete, too.
Oh, he's fantastic. He's fantastic. I've seen a few of his matches, and he's going to do great in the business. He already is doing great in the business.
Yeah, for sure.
And let's see. Oh, another question here. All right, this is the second one I saw. This is like a two-part question. Who is the most professional wrestler you ever met, and who is the most unprofessional wrestler you ever met?
The most professional, I'd have to say Bret Hart. And the most unprofessional?
Yes.
Well, it'd probably be someone you wouldn't know because they didn't make it big. No, you know, the one thing about the indie shows, you do have those people where it's their first match. And I remember the first time I saw some of those people, they don't know the etiquette, like just how I didn't know the etiquette around a fancy dinner table. At wrestling and in the dressing room, there is etiquette, and you're taught that by the older, well-experienced wrestlers. So I know when I first saw them, the rookies, or, they come in all big-headed and they haven't had a match yet, and it's like, you have to earn it. You have to earn your place in the dressing room, and you have to go around, shake everybody's hand, and introduce yourself, and look them in the eyes. Just stuff like that, right?
Exactly.
But they wouldn't know that. But nobody tells them that. They just kind of, for some of them. So they're unprofessional only because no one's told them.
Oh, I see.
But so it's something you learn, like how to carry yourself. And you're schooled if you step out of line. Like, say, you're in the ring and maybe you sell something that didn't look very solid, you're going to get hurt because you did that.
Exactly. You're right.
So there's that kind of thing, like, oh, it looks like you're picking on them. It's like, but yeah, it's like when you're a puppy is biting too hard, and the mother and father go, they scuff them up a little bit. So if somebody is unprofessional, it's usually they don't know any better. And I feel for them.
But pretty much the people that are doing pretty good in the business, they're all professional, pretty much.
Yeah, except sometimes their heads might get too big.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I think Bret talks about it, and I'm not one to judge. I'm just repeating what I've heard Bret say. It's quite common knowledge, but he said that whole Shawn Michaels and the DX thing, like those guys were getting out of hand, and he said if Tom was there, he would have made sure that those people wouldn't have been out of line. He called Tom the pit bull of the dressing room.
Oh, and I remember the whole DX stuff too, and how they ran the place down there at the time, pretty much, and
and that was all going on and then Bret, the screw job and everything. So it was, it wasn't a good place for Bret.
No, it was
at the time.
It was a lot of negativity.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, it was great for DX. I'm sure they were having a good time.
Yeah. I'm looking here. Somebody just asked in your picture. This is somebody from Nova Scotia, Canada, by the way. So Canadian fan here.
Yeah.
And he asked, in your picture, it looks like you are singing, and were you happening to sing "O Canada," the Canadian national anthem, or were you doing ring announcing in the ring?
I'm doing ring announcing, and I'm like, my eyes are closed because I'm looking at my cue card. I'm looking down, and I hold it away from me, so I'm like, I'm probably going, and up next is the man they call Ali! And I was like really enunciated and being charismatic. And yeah, my friend came and took some pictures for me a couple of weeks ago, and she captured that one, and I was like, whoa, I love that. I look like the Rolling Stones or something. Mick Jagger.
It's a great picture.
Yeah, I know. I was like, totally, I didn't know I looked like that when I was announcing, but yeah.
Yeah, you look right at home in the ring, very comfortable.
Oh, I love it. And there's not a better feeling to be in the ring and have a spotlight on you.
Yeah? Do you have any future plans of anything that you want to do, or are you pretty much doing everything that you want to do right now?
Well, I do have a book. That book has been, buried on my computer for, like, I was almost finished it in 2007. And then I took a break from it. So I think I have like one more chapter to write. I never wrote the ending of it. And I think I didn't write the ending because I didn't have an ending. And I think the ending is, now that Tom's passed, I think that was my ending. Oh. And I think it's ready to be done. So I'm going to finish that in the summer because I'm a teacher. I have this year I'm the librarian and the phys ed teacher.
Oh, okay.
What an oxymoron that is, but I go from drop and give me 20 to okay, where's your library books?
And then by
I'm
nighttime,
very versatile.
And then by nighttime, you're in the ring announcing wrestling.
Yeah, I know. The parents are like, wow, you were multi-dimensional.
Oh, you got the best of all worlds,
Yeah, I do. and we have a show tomorrow.
Oh,
So
really?
I'm glad my voice is okay, because one night my voice was not okay. And I was like, oh, how am I going to make it through? My voice was cracking.
Oh, that's not good. That's
No,
not good.
but I did it. I struggled through with cracked voice.
Well, you made it. That's the main thing. Michelle, I gotta tell you, I'm so honored and so privileged. Just hearing all these stories and getting to talk about all these different things and the love for professional wrestling. It's such an amazing, amazing, just interview that we've had here tonight.
Yeah, and I have to give a big shout out for my boss, Stacey Angel. She's the lady that is, relentless, and she's the one who keeps putting this Hart legacy, keeps wrestling together, and she's the one who's getting our sponsors and getting the job done. So I thank her for, trusting me to be the voice of Hart Legacy Wrestling. I hope you guys, YouTube it and see what we're doing. And it's a good time. You won't be disappointed.
And if you ever have, if you ever have any shows that you would like, any extra promotion on, and I tell this to all my guests, feel free to just send me the information of a show. You can text it to me or message it to me. I'd be more than happy to, do some promotion.
Okay, well, thanks so much.
For you guys, and I just see right here, we were talking about it earlier. This is somebody that must have came in after we talked about it. Let's see, Hart Foundation, 1997, Hart Foundation versus Undertaker, Dude Love, and Stone Cold was in Halifax. Do you remember how the fans supported the Hart Foundation?
That particular match?
Yes.
I'm not. No, I'm not. It's not ringing the bell for me.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing too. It's not ringing a bell for me either. I don't know if it was on a TV show or a house show.
But I know the fans were always super supportive of the Hart Foundation. And even when, there was the USA against Canada, remember when Owen and Bret had the Canada flag?
Yes.
They'd come in the ring and they were supposed to be heels. The Americans would still cheer for them.
Yeah.
Like it was like a mixed reaction. It was like some of them are booing them, but some of them are still cheering for them. Like they always had such a strong following, be it in Canada or in the United States. And I always thought that Bret had more celebrity and more celebrity treatment in the United States than Canada. Because when we went to the States with him, I was like, you're a god here. But in Canada, I was just like, oh, it's Bret Hart. I was like, oh, yeah, it's Bret Hart. But I guess that's Canadians.
And, it made a shift, though, like in 1997, when Bret turned heel in the States. And then he would go home to Canada. He was, booed heavily by everybody in the States in that year. And then he would go to Canada and get those just hero welcomes, and it was amazing, the crowd reaction. And oh, by the way, this match took place on Monday Night Raw. The fan put in the comment section. So that was
it really did take off that way. I'm just talking about when it first started. The people were a little mixed at first. But I know Helen was so upset, even though she knows it's a work. She's like, Darlene, your aunt called, and she said you said some terrible things about America. She's like, I told you you didn't mean it. It's your job. Can you give her a call, darling? Like she was, like Helen would cry when the Star Spangled Banner had come on. She was very patriotic.
Oh, I could imagine so, and.
She'd be in tears, like it was the worst angle ever. Canada against the United States.
I'm just thinking too, and this is one of my most remembered Bret Hart moments. I don't know if you'll remember it or not, but this was on a Monday Night Raw in 1997 as well, when Bret Hart he was in the ring with Vince McMahon after a cage match, and he shoved Vince McMahon down when he asked him a question, and then he's like, frustrated, that's not the word for it, and oh my god, he went off. He's like, this is bullshit, and then the commentators are like, oh, well, we apologize for Bret Hart. And he went off, and he was so passionate about it, he really sold, that heel persona. I'm like, oh my god. It was amazing. I don't know if you remember that, but that was one of my memories, biggest memories of Bret, that when he just went heel, it was amazing.
Well, yeah, I guess the common fan wouldn't know this, but if you do anything in the ring, we had Facade wrestled for us a couple of weeks ago, and I guess he's always a baby face, and we needed him to be a heel, and he's like, what? You want me to be a heel? And he's like, I don't do that. I'm always He's like, okay, I'll be a heel. And he had the most fun that night.
Wow.
He just, and I was like, oh, you didn't know? And even my daughter, when she was a babyface manager, it was more difficult than being a heel manager. And she's like, oh, I love being a heel. I was like, yes, being a heel's awesome.
Facade.
It's way more fun.
That name sounds familiar. Yeah. Facade. Would that happen to be the Neon Ninja?
Ninja Facade. Yeah, Neon Ninja Facade. Another awesome wrestler. And I didn't know of him, and then he came to wrestle for us, and I sure do know him now.
I've been watching him wrestle for years.
Oh, have you? I think he's from around your area.
He is.
Isn't he?
I think he's from Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken, but he always wrestled on the indie circuit in Cleveland. Always.
Yeah.
And he would give you some of the greatest matches. He really would.
Oh, for sure.
So when you said Facade, that's like the light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, wait a minute, I think this is the Neon Ninja.
Yeah, and we have the Australian Suicide.
Oh, okay. Are you?
If you watch AAA wrestling.
I've seen a couple things with AAA, and also AAA, they just got into a partnership with that new All Elite Wrestling company, so AAA, I think, is going to get some pretty big exposure out of this, too.
Yep. It's exciting times.
I'm getting more...
Just,
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. They got a question there?
Yeah, I'm just looking here to update you. Kevin put in the chat, updating us on this this match on Raw, that you or I did not know. It was a flag on a pole match. Canada was on one side, the United States was on the other. Owen was the Intercontinental Champion, British Bulldog was the European Champ, and of course Bret was with them.
Wow. That sounds like a very memorable match. I can't believe I don't remember it.
I know, it's like...
It's just, with age, I bet if I watched it, I'd be like, oh, yes, there it is.
See, that's what I'm thinking, too, because as I'm sitting here...
Yeah, you're making me want to watch it.
Yeah, I'm reading the comments and I'm like, I think I kind of remember this, but now it's like I want to go find it on my WWE network and watch it.
Yeah.
Oh, so many great memories. But, Michelle, such a pleasure. I gotta tell you, out of all the people that I've interviewed, I probably had, I would say, about a good 25, 30 people, maybe even a little bit more. And I'm counting in my head because I'm trying to remember my guests. My guests are predominantly, they're always male wrestlers, or, some of them were managers and whatnot. And I always wanted to get, more females on the shows, especially, with the women's revolution and everything. And I'm counting in my head, you're like the 5th female that I've ever interviewed. So you've made my top 5 of top 5 females that I interviewed.
Oh, nice. It's on the top 5 of 5.
And out of
top 5 of 100, it might be more impressive, but I'll take it. I'll take what I can get.
Yeah.
Laredo Kid's another wrestler that we've had.
Who is it again?
Laredo Kid.
Oh, yes.
Laredo Kid.
Yes, I've heard of Laredo Kid, yes.
Luchador. He's incredible, too. And Matt Hart. I haven't talked about my Matty.
Oh,
Matt
yes.
Hart is Smith Hart's son. And he's doing great, too.
Is he wrestling in Hart Legacy?
Yeah, he just came over. He left RCW to be with us, so very appreciative of that. He started Hart Legacy with his dad, Smith. And Smith, as you know, passed away in 2017.
Yes.
And so Hart Legacy was near and dear to Smith. So having Matt come and be a part of it is carrying on his legacy.
That's nice, carrying on the legacy, and that's something, that wrestling's all about, just going out there, having fun, carrying on a strong legacy, performing. And oh, by the way, how's Bret doing since his what was it, a couple of years ago, he had to battle prostate cancer, and then he beat it. And
yeah, it's all clear. It's still, he has checkups, and he's a spokesperson for Men's Health, and also with the Stroke Foundation, like he's a spokesperson for that too. And he does a lot of good. And I know he had the Terry Fox run, like in honor of Smith. He was the head of the Terry Fox run here in Calgary.
Oh, wow.
Getting a lot of donors, and so he does a lot of good work, Bret.
That's awesome.
But he's also very busy still. He's in big demand. He goes to a lot of, I think the new thing now, I just saw Mick Foley. If any of you ever can catch a Mick Foley show, go for it. Like he was at a comedy club. He has like a comedy show. But you go there, and he's talking all wrestling stories, and I'm like, this is amazing.
Oh, that's
I thought I was
awesome.
going to see like a stand-up comedy show, but it was even better. It was like wrestling stories. Hell in a Cell, that was it. Mick Foley, Hell in a Cell tour.
Yes.
I don't know if he's still touring with it, but was it ever hilarious? And Bret was there, and Bret got up on stage and was telling stories with him too, but the whole Hell in a Cell story is hilarious.
Oh,
he tells you what he's actually thinking when he's crawling up the cage, and what he's actually thinking when he gets choke slammed off the cage.
Yeah, I remember he took some huge bumps in that match. My God.
Oh, I know. Like he just. But I'm not going to tell you what he said in case you can download it, or maybe he sells it now, or you can go see the show. But Mick Foley is a very entertaining storyteller.
Oh,
in and out of the ring.
Actually, you know what? I did watch. They actually had the special on the WWE Network. 20. I think it was called like 20 Years of Hell, and it was Mick Foley doing a stand-up show. And I did watch that. Now that you're saying, I did watch it. They had it on the WWE Network.
Yeah, and knowing Mick, it probably changes a bit. Like even myself, like. You could ask me the same questions tomorrow, and I'll give you different stories. So, and Mick had a interactive portion of his show, so people could ask questions, and So yeah, even if you saw that video, I'm sure if you went to a live show, it'd be different.
Oh,
Very worth your money.
live shows
He's
are
a good
always the
friend
best.
of my daughter's and my niece, um, Lindsay. Lindsay Hart. She helps run his shows when he's in her area of the woods. He'll
Oh,
hire her to be his T-shirt girl and his MC.
that's nice.
And because of her, she introduced Brown and Mick, and he tells the story about how, one of his first matches was with Dynamite Kid, and how he couldn't eat for a couple of weeks afterwards. Part of that schooling, schooling the young ones, but maybe overdoing it a bit. Um, yeah, that's an example of that. But yeah, he had some great stories, and he, reached out to my daughter, and they're really good friends now. Mick he's such a good guy.
Oh, Mick, he just seems like that big-hearted person, that just has that
He
natural
is,
kindness.
yeah. So, and he does really well. Like he does raise money too for I think autism.
Oh, okay.
It's a charity. Like he raises money for a lot of charities, but I know autism is near and dear to his heart. His son has it.
Yes, yes. Yeah, Mick. He's always been, one of my favorite guys. Between his wrestling and, just what a great guy he is out of the ring, and just an amazing personality.
Hmm.
And Bret, um, I'm just thinking of Bret. I can't believe I didn't think of this earlier, but I have a little story, uh, with Bret. It was at WrestleCon back in WrestleMania weekend in 2015 out in Santa Clara, California. And I went to meet Bret, and pretty much, how I work, when I go to events or where there's a lot of walking to do, because I could walk, I could get around okay. It's just
Yes.
I can't walk too far. If I walk too far, then I'll get in
Right.
pain or I'll get tired and I have to sit down. So when I go to these big, wrestling conventions like WrestleCon, I'd get a wheelchair, to be pushed around in. And
Hmm.
I go around and I meet everybody, but I never take my pictures in my wheelchair, never. And in this instance, I'm like, oh wait a minute, I gotta stand up first, when I'm meeting Bret. Bret comes up to me, and he kind of holds my one side, and he's helping me up out of my wheelchair, and then right next to Bret and I is just Ken Shamrock standing there up against the wall, like kind of standing guard, watching what's going on. And while all this is going on, the security guard, who had my camera to take the photo, they took a photo of Bret helping me up out of my wheelchair.
Oh.
And it's one of those moments that I've had with Bret. Just such a great, genuine guy, and
Well, you
I'm
know what? I can't say enough about him. He always has time for his fans. He always makes you feel special. He's so appreciative of all his fans. And I remember that from day one, when he was a rookie. Like he just always treats everybody the same. Everyone's important. Everyone's a part of the show. Everyone's matters.
and it feels good. It really feels good, especially when you're going there to meet them, and pretty much everybody that I've met has been nice, but there's only like I believe 4 guys that went the extra mile, to actually help me, and
Yeah,
Bret was one of them.
yeah.
And Bret was one of the guys. He he pulled me up out of the chair, helping me up there. He walked me over to his table, signed autographs, talked to me for a couple minutes, and then took a couple pictures. He wasn't in a hurry at all. He makes sure he gives you time, and that's one of the things too.
And I think that's because he was brought up with the wrestling business, but he was also brought up working at the wrestling. Like he was the program boy, he had those menial jobs at the wrestling, so he's at ground zero with everybody, right?
Yeah.
He knows. Yeah, he knows. He's seen it. He's seen when a fan is treated well by a famous wrestler, and he's seen when a fan's treated not well by a famous wrestler, and he knows what's important. If it wasn't for fans, there would be no show.
And I feel
there was, especially his dad being the promoter. And he would always say, you got to give them the time. They paid for it. They deserve it.
It's so true because a lot of these, even though they're all nice, I never really had bad experiences, but most of the autograph sessions and the photo sessions, you're up there with them anywhere between 30 seconds to 1 minute. That's what you get. And with Bret, I pretty much got anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes, which is unheard of.
Mick Foley does that at the end of his show, too. At the end of his show, people could line up and meet him. And he let us budge the line because we had to go. But when I was watching him, he was giving everybody, 5 minutes. I was like, wow, you're going to be here all night, Mick? But he was just, and if you know Mick, he likes to talk to. You should have him on your show. You should have Mick on your show.
I
Mick
would
Foley.
love to. I would love to. If I could get in contact with him, I would love to have Mick on the show.
Yeah.
And talk with him. I just, I hope I was professional enough.
Well, yeah. Well, hey, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it so much so that probably beat the record of everybody. You told me that person had, who did you say was 2 hours?
Oh, the Patriot was 2 hours.
The Patriot. I'm beating the Patriot's record. I've been on the show for... I'm like, I can't talk that much.
Yeah,
there's no way I can talk that much.
We sat down. It doesn't even feel like we've been on the air this long. It's like it's just story after story. And one thing I noticed about you that I really like, I don't have to ask you something else. It's like you move on to something else and start telling another story that goes with the previous story. I think it's great.
Oh yeah, that's my ADD. Oh, that thing. That's a part of my multi-dimensional, the ADD.
I think it's great. I'm definitely gonna say out of the females I've had on my show, you're definitely the most talkative and my favorite.
Aw. Now you're flirting with me now.
I'm just telling you the truth.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Oh, you're welcome. And I don't know, we'll see what happens when more female guests come on the show. We'll see. But I don't know. I think you're gonna hold that top spot for the females up there pretty good. You raised the bar high tonight.
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep checking in, making sure that I'm still top 5 of 5.
Yeah. Hey, and I'll keep sharing it around. And surprisingly, because a lot of people. Wait, let's see. Just got something else in the chat here. I see. Kevin just said, "This is fascinating stuff. Tell her a big thank you from me."
Oh, well, you're welcome, Kevin. Thanks for hanging in there. I think Kevin's been with us for the whole 2 hours.
You know, the whole thing is they say, you know, I've heard a lot of people say, they say, well, you know, you got to try to keep, you know, podcast to an hour, under an hour, because not many people have the attention span. Well, my audience is still here.
Yes. So, you got the best audience.
I think you gauged some really good interest, and you told stories that kept everybody, you know, that's keeping everybody on the edge of their seat. Is there anything else before we wrap?
Well, you know what? I have a million stories. Like, you know, it's been a long time for me in the wrestling business, around, especially the Hart family, just being around them. And so many of them are great storytellers. So I have stories upon stories. So, but my dog's barking at me now. She's getting mad. What's the matter, Dim? I have a pug zoo.
Oh,
not
nice.
A bulldog.
Well,
a little pug zoo, and she's a little antsy.
Well, Michelle, if you ever would like to, if you would ever like to come back on the show one day, I would be honored to have you. I always give the invitation to everybody, you know, if they would like to come back, you know, that they're more than welcome, and the same goes for you.
Okay, well, I will certainly take you up on that offer. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, Michelle.
Thanks for all of you guys listening to me.
And thank you for accepting...
babbling.
Thank you for accepting the invitation.
No problem.
But I will sign off here. Fine. Just hang on the phone line while I sign off with the audience, and I'll let you know when we're off the air, okay?
Okay, that's it. Another edition of Wrestling Talk.
We got it. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this podcast as much as I loved sitting here bringing it to you. And let's see. Lisa just said, hold on. All right, we got one more person. Sorry, one more person. Lisa says, I have been in this whole interview and I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Lisa.
So everybody enjoyed it. Kevin enjoyed it. Lisa enjoyed it. We had a lot of people talking in here tonight, but I'm glad you enjoyed it, guys. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here for episode number 177 of the Beyond the Ring with Big T WWE News and Rumors podcast for, let's see, today's Thursday, March 7th, 2019. And stay tuned for another great episode. You guys know I got to come back to do Fastlane preview and predictions and Fastlane review on Sunday. I'll be back for all that. But until then, another big thank you to Michelle Billington for being here with me tonight. Michelle, thank you so much, and such an honor.
You're welcome, and good night.
And everybody else, we're going to sign off here. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you all very soon. Alright, guys, don't forget to put your likes on the video, leave your comments, subscribe to the channel. I'll talk to you all very soon. I love you all. And good night, everybody.